Flashlight techniques. Let's talk about a couple different flashlight techniques. The Harry's technique, the first one we're going to talk about, became very popular during the days that guys were using the larger mag lights and streamlight flashlights, because it was almost impossible for you to do any other kind of combined flashlight technique, and the Harry's technique worked really well. Let's talk about what the Harry's technique does well and what the Harry's technique does not do well. The Harry's technique is actually pretty good, and I highly suggest that you at least use it a few times tonight. It does a really good job at aligning three things, meaning it's very intuitive and easy for you to turn the light on and aim it in the direction of your target and still shoot. The bad news is it's pretty much regulates you to some sort of weaver position, if you will. So it can be quite unnatural for a lot of people. It doesn't tend to help a lot with recoil, but it also doesn't create a situation where you can't shoot well one-handed. And I'll talk about some of the techniques that is the case. The big thing that you need to be aware of if you're going to use the Harry's technique is how you get into that position. You need to get the gun out and bring the light underneath your hand, not stick the light out and then bring your gun around. Obviously, everybody see what I just did there? That's no bueno, okay? So gun comes out and then the flashlight comes underneath that to get into that position. One of the big disadvantages of the Harry's technique is it works really well when I'm shooting around right side cover. But if I have to shoot around left side cover, I have to expose almost everything in order to get the light the rest of the way out, so that I am not basically self-blinding and I'm getting light on what I'm trying to look at. The Rodgers or the Surefire technique, or as Bill Rodgers calls it, the syringe technique, this flashlight doesn't work, but this was all the rage 20 years ago or whatever it was, in the early 2000s. Surefire came out with these combat lights that had smaller diameters on them, and the idea behind this was that I could basically hold it like a cigar, if you will, wrap my remaining three fingers around and then activate the light with the heel of my hand or push it back into this other hand, depending on your hand size and the size of the light. A couple of things about this technique: I've got decent recoil control, probably better than me shooting one-handed, but not much better. But the big disadvantage of this technique, no matter how many times I've tried it, is when I get a good grip, where's my light pointing? Down, right? It's pointing down to the ground and not up where I want it into somebody's face. And I'm still having to combine three things. It does a good job of combining three things, it just doesn't align three things. For a lot of people, this is way too cumbersome for them to use. And to a certain extent, it requires a flashlight that's either modified or specially built for this particular technique. So it's not a bad technique, but it requires quite a bit of training to do it well. The other big disadvantage for me, specifically with this particular technique, is when I do this and I stick my finger in where I normally would, the knuckle of my index finger of my left hand is right in the way from where I need to be to pull the trigger correctly. So then I end up backing my finger out to a place where it's normally not, and I'm pushing on the gun and I'm not shooting nearly as well as I just might as well just shoot one-handed at that point. It's an option for you if you have this kind of flashlight. If you have a very small light like this or some of the others, sometimes you can get away with doing it. I can do a better job with this light because it's smaller and the angle of it allows me to push the light up so that it can shoot it, but it's still not optimum because the tail cap is not exposed quite enough for consistent behavior. The Chapman technique. This one kind of requires you to have a push button flashlight. The Chapman technique, that we're bringing it up only because it's somewhat historical, and if you have, for whatever reason, you end up with a flashlight that only works with a push button on the side, let's say that's what you got, this is an option for you to use it. It combines three things really well. It actually works really good at aiming the light up towards the face when you're shooting, but again, requires the push button, but all you're doing is putting the two together. And the reason it's called the Chapman technique is Ray Chapman, who was an IPSC shooter years ago, they put on a shooting match where we're gonna shoot low light and it's gonna be awesome, and you're gonna have to run around the house like this, and Ray Chapman didn't shoot like that, and they turned the buzzer on and Ray went and just shot everything like that and was like, what? And holstered, and everybody was like, oh, that's not fair, that's not what we wanted you to do. And then it became a technique. The FBI technique. it's funny, people make fun of or used to make fun of the FBI technique. The FBI technique operates on the premise of keeping the light away from your body because people shoot at the light. And this thing came about years ago when back in the day when the FBI used to get in quite a few gunfights. And the reality is, if you've done a lot of force on force, or at least a significant amount of force on force with a flashlight, guess what people shoot? The flashlight. I've had my flashlight hit with sim rounds and paintball rounds many, many times, right in the lens. Because once the shooting starts, that's what people start aiming for. So all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait a minute, this is not so stupid, okay? Because when you do this, if they miss the flashlight, guess what they hit? Your face. It's not as ridiculous, and it is a really good way when you are in the locate and identify mode to not point your gun at everything you see and then change the rhythm, duration, and angle of the light as you're looking somewhere to see what's going on in a room while you stay mostly behind cover. Where this is a very difficult technique to align three things, it's a really good technique from the locate and identify mode, i.e. keeping the light away from your body, changing the rhythm, duration, angle, and horizontal, vertical displacement. On the floor technique is almost a joke. When I was working for them, we went to see this police department. They were like, oh yeah, we do night shoots all the time. And it was like, oh really? Let's see. And they were turning their flashlights on, they stuck them down on the ground. And they started shooting. We were like, no, that's not the same thing. Neck index. The neck index is a technique that I don't want to say I've invented it because it's impossible for me to say that, but nobody taught it to me, but I started using it well over 20 years ago. And the idea was, out of all of these different flashlight techniques that we were being taught and using and everything else, I couldn't get around the fact that I was probably going to be going, what's going on over there? And then go, oh no, and have to draw the gun and shoot. So the idea that I was going to be looking and then go didn't make much sense to me. So my idea was like, oh, wait a minute, or I'm looking into a room and I see something, and now it's just an issue of me indexing the flashlight off of my neck or my face, or depends on your body stat, and engaging one-handed. And I found it to be a very effective technique for shooting at speed with one hand and a flashlight. With a little bit of practice, it's really good at aligning three things. One last thing, when we start talking about neck index, so you guys are clear, when you start trying to use this technique, you're not trying to get the light directly behind the gun. If you get the light directly behind the gun, it's just going to reflect off the gun. You're not going to see much of the target, or you're not going to see much of your sights. What you're trying to do is get a consistent location where you can put the flashlight, aim exactly at the face or the target that you're trying to identify, but still get enough light coming off of the edge of the lens to illuminate your sights if you're running night sights, okay? Or if you're not running night sights. And that location is gonna be different for all of you. It's not gonna be like you should touch your knuckles exactly to right here, because what works for Jonah may not necessarily work for somebody else. How you get into position, where you raise the gun, how tall your head is, all of those things are going to have an impact on what works for you.